any level, but it becomes more so as players move to high school. Many parents have unrealistic expectations for their children when it comes to their athletic abilities. They are convinced that their children are destined for athletic stardom. When their children fail to attain their parents' dreams, however, many are quick to blame the coach. Parents overlook the fact that their children may have stopped growing, lost interest in their sport, or may be outworked by others who are more determined. This delusional lack of perspective by parents overcomes many very good coaches, and I suspect underlies some of the criticism leveled at coaches Fischetti and Beck. Let me be clear. There is no place in sports for bullying, harassment, or intimidation from coach to player. That said, like it or not, there are many different effective coaching styles, as many effective coaching styles as there are coaches. And like it or not, most coaches raise their voices and sometimes even use salty language when addressing high school players. Sometimes coaches holler because they have to be heard over a noisy crowd in a gymnasium, or by a player 300 feet away in right field. Sometimes coaches holler because, in the moment, it's an effective way to attract the player's attention. And sometimes coaches holler, just like parents holler, because a child has worn thin their patience. Some parents and players, however, fail to appreciate that when a coach hollers, it's not personal. Instead, many parents and players only hear a raised voice and assume that the coach is berating or belittling their son or daughter for no good reason. I speak from some experience because my younger son kind of falls into that camp from time to time. These folks either aren't aware of the background or get half a story when they ask their child why the coach is hollering at them, and then leap to the conclusion that the coach is a bully when it's just not true. Not all coaches are perfect. Sometimes in the heat of a moment, we say things we regret, and then we toss and turn all night long, playing over in our heads how we could have handled a particular interaction with a player, a parent, or game official differently. Coaches Fischetti and Beck would be the first to admit that this includes them. Recognizing and addressing shortcomings, however, is a sign of a good coach. In this regard, coaches Fischetti and Beck strive to improve, and there is every reason to believe that they will continue to do so. Efforts to seek the removal of these coaches provide a skewed and unfair perspective. Few coaches are as committed to Columbia and Columbia baseball and to their players as coaches Fischetti and Beck are. In addition to their in-season coaching responsibilities, which take 6 days a week, these coaches commit themselves to the baseball program year-round. As an example, the Baseball Boosters holds regular monthly meetings. In addition to the parents who attend these meetings, coaches Fischetti and Beck are always there, actively participating in our decisions and fundraising efforts. Beyond that, when the players gather twice a year to wash cars to raise money, the coaches are there. When the parents gather twice a year to work on the baseball fields at Underhill Field, the coaches are there. The baseball program is not a way for coaches Fischetti and Beck to make a few extra bucks. In fact, if you considered the hourly rate for the time these coaches devote to the baseball team, it would be pennies. Our coaches are committed to the growth of our students and players as young men. They focus on the students' performances in the classroom, the discipline they receive in and out of school, and help to develop their players on the ball field. But because they have to support a team of players, the interest of one player may be at odds with the interest of the team. I believe that coaches Fischetti and Beck have the interest of the team and their players at heart. I would encourage this board to reappoint them. Thank you.
Continue on baseball with Ted Brackett. Ted Brackett. Brackett here. Yes.
Thank you. My name's Ted Brackett. I've been living in Maplewood for the last 15 years. My son, Kasdan, now is a high school senior in the high school and a part of the baseball program. Went through all the rec programs, playing summer ball, played club team balls, been with a lot of different coaches, and I just got to say I'm very pleased with the way he's turned into a man under the present coaches. He stopped listening to me a few years ago, but one thing he does listen to is the coaches of the baseball program. I feel very strongly about a lot of things that Bill just said. I'd like to underline those. I think that he's right on the button. As a coach myself through the rec program and through the summer league programs with my older son Kasdan, but then also with a younger son I have, Colton, there is one constant. The players change, the coaches change, but the parents, there's always going to be some parents that complain. And that's their right. I mean, they want what's best for their kids. And so I have no doubt that will always be. And as Bill said, I do not think that anyone thinks that they're perfect as a coach and that baseball is an unusual sport. You're constantly making decisions. The coach is more like the quarterback of a team. He's constantly play after play. Do we bunt? Do we run? Do we steal? Constantly making decisions that a Monday night quarterback can second guess. And in fact, there's a couple I'd like to talk to you about that happened last year with my son, but you should have brought him in. I mean, I wasn't even at the game, but I know we should have brought him in. But as I said, my younger son, Colton, is going to be a freshman next year, and it's my hope that Coach Fassetti is able to work the same magic he did with my older son, Kasdan, and bring him through the program and help turn him into a man. I really appreciate the work that they've done here and their growth through Columbia as a school, and also how important sports is to a young man growing up and becoming a man. Thank you very much.
Next, also on baseball, Mark Stern. Mark Stern, Mr. Stern.
Hello, distinguished board members. How are you? It's freezing cold tonight, and talking about baseball tonight is a little difficult because obviously the fields are frozen. But I love baseball. My family loves baseball. My mom used to babysit for Gil Hodges' kids in Brooklyn, and I'm going to have a slightly different, very different perspective than these other gentlemen who just spoke. A good number of families have an issue with the coaches in the baseball program for a lot of reasons. In September or October, we submitted a 34-page document to the school board. I don't know how many of you have actually spent the time to read that document. There are quite a few people who do not approve of the coaching that's going on. That being said, every human tries to do the best that they can. I'm sure Coach Fassetti and Coach Beck try to do the best they can. However, when it comes to our children, I feel, and quite a few other families feel, that this is not the way that we want our kids to be raised, with an extracurricular activity that should be fun. Now, I understand that we all have a perspective on the baseball program. What I would like to ask for is an independent investigation, because the investigation that went on at Columbia High School was done by certain people who were very involved in the baseball program. I feel that for the benefit of our children, this investigation should be done by an independent entity. So that is what I'm here to ask. I'm not giving specifics. The document is there. I don't know how many of you have read the document, but nonetheless, please take the time to read the document. Let's have a different perspective on this, other than just people who are coming saying, oh, they're great, they're great, they're great. Come on, people, read the document. Let's have an independent investigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stern. And next, also on baseball, Brian Clark.
Hello. I only wish my son had had the same experience that all of these folks who had such a wonderful experience had. My name is Brian Clark, and my son Brendan played varsity baseball for the last 4 years at Columbia. and I would like to request a full independent investigation of the coach's behavior. When new AD Larry Buscio selected his friend Joe Fischetti to replace him as head baseball coach, there was widespread panic among parents with kids already in the program. There were significant questions about his lack of varsity experience as well as his emotional fitness for the job, particularly since many parents had already seen him in action as the freshman coach and were concerned things would be as bad with the varsity. Nevertheless, when his first season got off to a rocky start, I thought I would try to communicate with Coach Fischetti to express support and offer a bit of advice. I suggested he remember baseball as an extracurricular activity and told him it was important the kids knew he was in their corner. He responded by telling me there was a lack of talent on the team and that he hadn't been hard enough on them. Last year, Coach Beck stood in front of the assembled parents at the first baseball meeting, telling parents if their kids were working with an outside coach, they should stop immediately. That meant they were cutting off most of the coaching these kids would get the entire season. That was a problem for us because my son had a throwing issue that neither Fischetti nor Beck could help him with. In fact, Beck told us to get him help, so we did, from a coach at Seton Hall Prep. Nevertheless, while we were dealing with Brendan's throwing issue, Coach Fischetti still did see fit to mock him in front of his younger brother's health class, saying, "I hope you throw better than your brother." That went over really well at home. In fact, if you look back at the last 2 years, the number of kids who actually got real coaching at Columbia is pretty small. There were at least 2 occasions last year when Coach Fischetti kind of threw his hands up and said, "I can't coach these kids," and the kids heard him. The implication is clear, the kids are uncoachable, and yet he chose these kids, at least the ones he didn't drive away from the program. It makes me question whether he even wants to coach teenagers. There were 3 seniors on the team last year, mostly because all of the kids who've been driven away at one point or another, including Josh Scholar, Andrew Powers, Dion Roberts, Jack Worth, Gus Voorhees, and Tim McPhillips. All would have been seniors last year, but left the program at one point or another. And when Dion quit, the coaches told the kids he showed what a pussy he was. The coaches, like Fischetti in particular, have displayed an astounding lack of discretion in their time running this program, even though you would have hoped they would have learned their lesson after talking to the media about Louis Cram's arm, but apparently not. I had Brendan at a workout last year when his fall coach said, "Man, the Columbia coach really hates your kid." He then proceeded to tell me he was umpiring a Columbia game and that Fischetti just trashed my son throughout. As I mentioned earlier, Fischetti was also clear in his opinion about the lack of talent on the team. Having that opinion about the kids on your team is one thing, but voicing it within earshot of my son Brendan is something else entirely. How do you think it makes a kid feel to hear his coach tell the other team's coach there's no talent on Columbia's team? Imagine if the shoe were on the other foot. If a player were to voice what he really thought of Fischetti as a coach, or that he doesn't know when to shut his mouth. When Fischetti and Beck found out Brendan was attending Penn State, a large Division I school, they said to him, "Guess you're giving up baseball." Think about that for a minute, folks. They knew Brendan had a goal of playing Division I baseball, but rather than encourage or offer to put a call into the coach, they shot him down. It's this type of negative, spiteful commentary that's par for the course. It's not a style of coaching. It's mean-spirited and it's hateful. Further, Brendan told me there were several times last year when Fischetti and Beck took the kids into the outfield and told them the only way they believed they could make the kids play better was by being dicks to them. And so they were. In particular, there was one kid Brendan's junior year who was abused so badly he broke down into tears one day after his brother took him to lunch. I actually have an email from that day from the brother. Unfortunately, the family will not come forward with any information, but they know who they are, because they're afraid of retribution from the coaches. It's one of the reasons a promise of anonymity was necessary before many parents would write to Ms. Aaron. And there were at least 8 families who did write to Ms. Aaron. Is it any wonder that Brendan calls the last 2 high school seasons the worst of his baseball career? After I wrote my initial letter last July, Ms. Aaron promised a thorough investigation. Instead, she worked hand in hand with Larry Buscio, Joe's friend, and talked to a few parents, but none of the kids who could have, quote, corroborated the information. Perhaps more troubling, last August, a student's mother stopped in Buscio's office to ask about the baseball coaching situation. Buscio raised his hand to stop her, told her Fischetti was his friend, then confirmed everything we thought about this so-called investigation when he said, "Coach Fischetti isn't going anywhere." In the summary of that so-called investigation, Mr. Mamoli wrote, "We are committed to providing athletic programs that are characterized